Hi and welcome to another How to English video with me, Adam David Broughton. Now, the reason I started this YouTube channel and started making these videos is for one reason only, which is to end what I call learner frustration. Now, this learner frustration, in my experience teaching for 14 years now, almost every student I've ever taught has always reached a point where they get really frustrated that they're not making progress. Are you feeling frustrated with your English? Are you totally happy with where you are, how comfortable you feel using English, speaking English and learning English? Or do you think you could be learning more? Do you think you could speak better, listen better, have more control over grammar and have a wider range of vocabulary? Now, one of the biggest frustrations, one of the biggest reasons for this frustration is that you get to a point where you don't feel like you're learning more grammar or learning more vocabulary, or more commonly, you're learning vocabulary, learning grammar, but then you're forgetting it the next day. And this is really, really frustrating because it feels like you're making a lot of effort and working a lot, but you're not getting anywhere. You're not making any progress. Now, if you're learning, which you obviously are, you always need to be making progress. And as soon as you stop making progress, or the progress isn't proportional to the amount of work, effort and practice that you're doing, you're going to feel frustrated. Now, a big reason for this frustration is a lack of vocabulary as well, or the feeling that you're learning vocabulary, but you're forgetting it the next day. So let's have a look at this. Now, the way that you can approach this is by thinking, well, answering the following question. What should you be learning today? What in English should you be learning and trying to improve? Now, it sounds like a really simple question, but lots of people don't answer this question correctly and then they get frustrated. Often what happens, particularly with vocabulary, is that English learners learn vocabulary at random. Maybe they listen to podcasts or they read online classes and things, and the English vocabulary that will be taught is often English at random. It's what we call general English. Now, if you think about English or languages in general, take English, there are literally hundreds of thousands of words, expressions, idioms, proverbs, and general vocabulary. Hundreds of thousands. The question is, which of those things should you learn? Out of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, you're not going to use all of those words and vocabulary. So which should you learn? Now, it's a very, very important question, because if you just learn English at random, then you're going to become frustrated. Because out of the hundreds of thousands of words, English teachers really don't know what to teach you. At about B1, B2 level and above, we have no idea what to teach you. We don't know what vocabulary you and only you need. So what we teach is what we call general English. Now, general English is okay until you get to about B1 level. Why is that? Well, let's say below B1 it's basically the foundations of the language. Now, those foundations will be the same for everybody, every English learner. Everybody uses a certain amount of, or a very specific number of words and vocabulary and even grammar. But when you get above B1, well, the grammar that you need to learn is basically specific to you and you only. And there's not one English teacher that can tell you what vocabulary you should learn. Who do you think best knows what vocabulary you should learn today? Of course, the answer and the only answer is you and only you. Only you know what you should learn. Only you know what vocabulary you don't know or you don't know how to use. That should be your number one priority in terms of what you should be learning on a daily basis to make progress. So if you think about this, you can break down this vocabulary into two different categories. You should really, in terms of vocabulary, only be learning one of two things all the time to guarantee that everything that you learn, and only you, is relevant to you and only you. That way, you will guarantee that you'll always be making progress and you'll remember the vocabulary and you won't forget it. The only reason you forget vocabulary is because you're not interested in that vocabulary or you don't think you're going to use it. So obviously you forget it. Now that's exactly what happens when you don't prioritize what you're going to learn. So, the first thing you should be learning in terms of vocabulary is really simple. It's something that you want to say, but you don't know how to say. So, this kind of vocabulary is basically little gaps in your range of vocabulary that you have now. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend and you're speaking and you get to a point where you don't know how to say a particular piece of vocabulary. You have the word in your language, but you don't know how to say it in English. Now, that is the most important thing that you can learn today. Why? Because you wanted to say it, but you didn't know how. So, this kind of vocabulary should basically be your top priority in terms of vocabulary to be learning on a daily basis. Something that you want to say, but you don't know how to say. Now, this is also applicable to grammar. So again, you're having a conversation, and then you get to a point in the conversation where you're doubting between two tenses. Maybe you're speaking in the past, and you don't know if you should use the present perfect or the past simple. Well, that is something that you want to say, but you don't know exactly how to say, which would indicate that you should probably do some more practice or have some more explanations about the difference between the present perfect and the past simple in this case. So, what I recommend you do in terms of identifying these gaps in your range of vocabulary is just think in your head, have imaginary conversations in your head. You can do it out loud, but sometimes that feels a bit strange in the beginning. So you can just have an imaginary conversation in your head about something you would normally speak about. Maybe it can be a situation at work, or it could be a typical social situation with some friends or family members. And you're speaking about whatever you want to speak about, and every time you get to a point in the conversation in your head that you want to say something, but you don't know how to say it, then you write it down and then continue the conversation. If you do this for 5 minutes, I can guarantee you'll find a list of words, expressions, and general vocabulary, and maybe even things that you don't know about grammar that you should write down and prioritize for that day in terms of English vocabulary and grammar that you're going to learn. Okay, so the first thing is something that you want to say, but you don't know how to say. Now, the second thing that you should be learning are corrections of mistakes that you're making. So I talk about mistakes in lots of my videos because they're so important. They're these little things which are stopping your English from being fantastic and beautiful and really good. So imagine you've got a house and your house can be very messy and disorganized, or your house can be very tidy and orderly and objects are where they should be. This is similar to mistakes. So you want to be tidying your house, making sure that everything is correct and in its place, just like you should be tidying up your English in your head, so that your English house in your head is just as it should be. So that's clearing up these mistakes. So I spoke about this in another video, which was trying to identify the mistakes that you're commonly making, your most frequent mistakes. Write those down, learn the corrections of those things. So if you learn and only learn these two things, you can guarantee that everything that you learn in English will be relevant to you and you only. And if you don't learn these things and you continue to learn English randomly, random vocabulary, random grammar, then you're going to feel frustrated because there are hundreds of thousands of words, phrases, expressions, idioms, proverbs, everything. You can't learn and use all of those things. It's impossible. Each person has what we call their working vocabulary. Now, the working vocabulary is the words and phrases that you use most of the time, let's say 80% of the time. And they're really only about 10,000 words for your average educated person. So there really aren't that many when you think about it. But there are hundreds of thousands of words available in the language. So you really want to try and focus on which words and which vocabulary you should be learning on a daily basis to make everything that you learn relevant. If it's relevant and it's vocabulary that you want to use, you will remember it, and that's the most important thing. Who wants to spend all day, every day, learning vocabulary only to forget it 5 minutes later? There's no point in doing that. So really make sure that everything that you learn in English is relevant for you. That way you can guarantee that you're going to make good progress and you won't be frustrated and you won't forget everything that you learn. So prioritize these two things over everything. Things that you want to say in English but you don't know how, and corrections of the mistakes you're making. If you only learn these two things, you'll never be frustrated. And that's the key to getting really, really good English. See you in the next video.